to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Today, I'd like to talk about something that controlled my life for 42 years, and that is anxiety and fear. I'll share a little bit about my personal journey from feeling trapped inside these emotions and finally finding the courage to lean into them and embrace them. When I was at my lowest point as an alcoholic, I could not imagine ever feeling any different. I remember, I've talked about it a couple times, when right before I went to detox for the first time, I went twice, but the first time, I remember being drunk. I was always drunk at this point. And I went into the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I just looked like a skeleton. I didn't have any color in my face. I didn't have any life in my eyes. And I just looked at myself and whispered, "You're already dead." And the weight of the despair that I was feeling and the self-pity was just overwhelming. I mean, it redefines the word overwhelming. It was just, it was killing me. It was literally killing me. And I thought I was beyond hope. I didn't have a relationship with anything outside of myself. Spiritually, religiously, socially, I was not capable of having a true relationship. You know, I was with my boyfriend that I'm with now, but the relationship that we have now is just, it's like it's in color, and before it was black and white. You know, that's kind of the way that I was able to have relationships back then. I would say the only exceptions were my kids. I feel like that relationship was always just as beautiful as it is now. I mean, it's definitely more beautiful now. But I feel like that was the only two relationships where I was able to get out of self and focus, on the other person because I wanted to and I needed to because I was a mother. But I still wasn't the best I could be. I was so self-centered. I had to be in order to survive. That's what I thought. I needed alcohol to live. I literally needed alcohol to stay alive. That's what I believed. And actually, my body was so dependent on alcohol that when I finally went to detox that first time, I needed a walker to get out of bed and go to the bathroom, even. I had a big red sign on my door that said fall risk. So I did need alcohol physically at that time because my cells were dependent on it. But I just couldn't give anyone my full attention. My kids, I try not to regret the past, but it's hard. It's hard to not regret the past when I have those memories of just wishing I gave a little bit more to my kids, Although when I ask them, they share with me that I was a great mom. So that's so nice. But yeah, my mom, I remember just not giving her the attention that she deserved. I remember backing out of things when I had promised to do things with her. And my job at the time, I wasn't giving it the attention that it deserves. I'm there as there are certain expectations from me, and I don't believe that I was following through with those 100%. I was scared to do anything. Um, I was, that's where, like, if I really try to sum up what I was feeling when I was drinking all of that alcohol, it was anxiety. It was that I was trying to drown to subside the anxiety. That's the overall feeling that I remember. If I were to summarize it in one word, it would be anxiety. I was terrified of everything. I was working at home at the time, convenient, right, to drink all day, every day. And I was so full of anxiety to even get out of bed, to walk downstairs and work. So I didn't. I started staying in bed. I started actually working from my bed. I would get up and walk the kids to the bus stop or drive that, later on it got so that I wasn't even willing to walk to the bus stop. The kids didn't mind either. So I drove to the bus stop and just picture it. I was 5 houses down from the bus stop. So we got in the car and drove down there. So um, I only and then once I did that, I would go back home. So now the house was empty. I'd go back to bed, and my company was on the West Coast, so I could sleep until 11 o'clock, and then I'd wake up and start working, which is fine because I did work late. I was on that schedule, but anyway, it got to the point where I was still sleeping past when the West Coast was getting up to start working. So that's when it was not working anymore. And I really only got out of bed other than that to get more wine while I was working. I drank all day, every day, and all night. I didn't shower. I didn't brush my teeth. I was nervous to go to the store. I was consumed with anxiety. I want to say fear when I say that, but I learned today what the difference is between fear and anxiety, so I'll share that, what I learned with you here. So, fast forward to today, and I can confidently say that I am a freaking miracle. I've learned that when I experience fear and anxiety, I don't have to believe that I'll never feel different like I did that day that I was looking in the mirror. And it wasn't just that day, every day, all day. I never believed that I could feel any different than I was feeling. But I've been through these emotions now countless times. Um, and my anxiety already was less, exponentially less when I stopped drinking. When I stopped drinking, my anxiety medication started actually working. It says it on the bottle, but who actually believes what the bottle says, right? I mean, if you're drinking and it says drinking will lessen the effects of this, if you're drinking, you're probably not paying attention to that. At least I wasn't. So I've been through these emotions now as a sober alcoholic countless times. And now I can see that I'm stronger on the other side of them, always, every single time. In the past, my instinct was to hide, shrink, to like get smaller, to physically get smaller as soon as I felt anxiety or fear creeping in. I wanted to escape from those uncomfortable feelings. But now I've learned to do the opposite. and I swell up and I lean in and I lean forward and I stand up. And this has taken me 7 years for this to happen. Every experience, every challenge that I have faced over the past 7 years has been downloaded into my brain, building my confidence brick by brick. And here's the important part. My experiences aren't just for me. I have a responsibility to share my growth and the lessons I've learned with others, whether it is, when I was working with my staff, which I shared a lot with them about how anxious I was about things. And because I don't know, for me, it felt like it lessened it a little bit when I could tell somebody about it. I think other people do the opposite. They don't want anybody to know because it's just going to make it worse. And I get that. But sharing my experiences with others, that's why I'm here. That's why I show up for a podcast episode every single day, because we never truly know whose lives we might impact when we open up and share our experiences. So, how did I get comfortable feeling uncomfortable? Because it's not what this stuff really started happening for me when I started practicing my sobriety program. And I talked about it yesterday, how my sobriety program is about saying yes. And once you say yes, then the willingness will come, then the strength will come. This is right along the same lines. This is an extension of yesterday's podcast, really. I kept doing it. I started saying yes, the willingness came, the strength came, and then I kept doing that. I started doing it, just like I said yesterday. And then all the while, I would let myself feel. I would let myself feel that discomfort, that anxiety, the fear. And I watched my discomfort not kill me, And anxiety, that's what it used to feel like for me. It felt like I was having a heart attack because I would have a panic attack in my chest where my heart would keep skipping beats, and I would get like this pressure in my neck, and then I'd feel like I was going to pass out. Like, it is so impactful to our bodies, the stress that comes from anxiety and fear. And I would start letting myself feel it and keep taking a step forward. And it really, it's hard to say, like, I hate to say this, but my actual stroke was a lot less uncomfortable at the time that it was happening than many of the panic attacks I've had over the years. Those panic attacks really felt like I was dying. That's how powerful it is to some of us. To me, that's how it was. I truly did not think that I was going to live through whatever it is that I was anxious about. So I wanted to understand the difference between fear and anxiety today. So fear is a proportionate response to a realistic threat. It's our brain's way of protecting us. I listened to a video today. Actually, I think it was Dr. Phil. I don't know. I don't normally listen to Dr. Phil. I'm just saying that out loud. But I was listening to this one because he defined fear and anxiety really quick. So he said, fear is like I put a snake on the table in front of you and you scream and run out the door. Anxiety is an excessive uneasiness in the absence of a realistic threat. So that would be more like I just say the word snake to you and you start screaming and run out the door. That's anxiety. Um, and anxiety is often a product of our past experiences. So, what I used to do, and maybe you can relate, is let anxiety convince me that there was a realistic danger. I believed it without question, and I would immediately go into flight mode. I never fought back. I only ran away. I only knew how to hide. I was afraid that if I tried to face whatever the threat was, that anxiety again would kill me. I used to shake so bad that people could see it. My face would shake, my hands would shake. I couldn't hold things in my hand. Um, the absolute worst was when my legs would shake, and they would shake so bad that when I was standing on them, I was sure that they were just going to give out from under me. The question is that will always go unanswered is how much of that shaking was withdrawal and how much of it was true anxiety. And I'll never know that because they felt the same to me. I think that they were feeding on each other as well. But now that I'm sober, I've come to realize that it's essential for me to challenge my anxiety, to choose fight over flight. And we need to get used to standing in the doorway of the unknown, um, facing uncertainties head on, letting things be unknown when we step forward. And this really hits home for me lately as I'm continuing to try to figure out what is wrong with my head and my vision post stroke. And it's just constant uncertainties. Everything around me right now is uncertain. I don't know what is physically wrong with me. I don't know what my future holds, if I'll ever be able to go back to work again. Maybe not back to work. I shouldn't say that anymore because I'm not employed. But if I'll be able to work again in some capacity or not. Or if I should be mentally preparing myself for what life is going to look like without a job. You know, am I always going to be living in the manner which I am now? Which isn't so bad. You know, I'm starting to find comfort. Like, I'm starting to find my groove, I guess. And I, it's like I don't want to find my groove too much because what if my groove gets upset? If something gets in the way? Or should I, just continue to push forward? I just don't know what direction life is going for me. So, I need to, though, be okay with that. I need to know how to keep taking a step forward when I don't exactly know where the path is going. And that's scary. It's really scary. It's like walking down the stairs to your basement and or it doesn't have to be down the stairs to your basement. Like walking down a hallway that's pitch dark, and you don't know what's down the hall. Like, it's scary. It's creepy. You feel like something's coming up behind you. That's how I feel. But it's about stopping the habit of playing out scenarios in my mind before I experience them. And that's what I call what ifing. I think a lot of people call it what ifing. So I learned a little bit about the different parts of the brain today and from a very elementary, like a fifth grader's point of view. So, the amygdala, the little part of the brain that's responsible for processing emotions like fear, will often activate before we even know if we should be afraid or not. It's like my body is already telling me I'm anxious. Like the symptoms is already telling me I'm anxious before I even know what I'm anxious about. You know what I mean? And then the hippocampus is the part that learns and remembers the experience. And so I'm going to use an example of my public speaking experience. But when I have that anxiety, that overwhelming anxiety from public speaking, and I experience it in a negative way, how the anxiety affects my ability to public speak, then I'm learning and remembering that experience, and that's reinforcing my anxiety about public speaking. So, so I'll just give a couple examples of my public speaking adventures over the years. So when I was in my 20s, we had a reorg at my company, and they made me a trainer. Okay. I had no previous background being a trainer, but that's what happens sometimes at these businesses. They do reorgs and they make people trainers um, with no experience. And I'll tell you, in my opinion, it's the absolute worst thing you can possibly do is put somebody who has no experience public speaking or educating adults in a position where they are forced to do that. Not only do they not know how to do it, they don't want to do it, and they may possibly have an incredible fear of public speaking. And that is something that can be addressed, but it's going to affect the quality of the lesson until it is addressed, and most likely it's can only be addressed through experience. So I'm just not a big fan of that, but that's my own very strong opinion. So in this job, I was in my 20s. I got to do training for some internal folks. So I was training probably about 8 to 10 of my peers at a time, and I was training them how to code um, airline fares and rules. So it I remember the very first time I stood in front of the class, my face was shaking, my voice was shaking, my body was shaking. Like I must have looked like I was having a seizure. It was really, really bad. And before I even got in there that day, I was in the shower, like dry heaving in the shower because I was so freaking beside myself, nervous and scared. Um, and I remember looking out into this very small audience that I had, and I remember looking at their faces, and I remember seeing a little bit of a snicker on some of their faces, which is really unfortunate that I have that memory because that probably did reinforce my anxiety in the situation that I was in. So, fast forward 20 years, let's see, fast forward 25 years probably. And I was standing in a very large executive conference room, and I was public speaking to my division of the company. And the exact same physical symptoms and response was happening 25 years later. Isn't that fascinating? That in 25 years, I never got the help that I needed in order to get over or get through public speaking without eliciting that kind of physical response. So I decided after that day that public speaking has got to be able to be learned just like any other skill, just like playing the piano. You know, I should be able to learn it just like I learned how to do marketing. I didn't go to school for marketing. Everything I know about marketing, I learned from Google. And I tell people that. I went to school for math. It has nothing to do with marketing. I could have majored in English and done marketing. It didn't matter. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, I made the decision for myself that I was gonna do whatever it took to learn how to be a public speaker, that does not feel get those physical responses from anxiety. So I started listening to audiobooks. And let's see, was this after my stroke? This was before my stroke that this started. I think it was before my stroke. And it was right around the time that I had my stroke. But I'm pretty sure it was before, because I think that I had a good experience before I had my stroke. And so I started listening to a bunch of audiobooks, and I just decided I was going to listen to books until I figured it out. It's like you go to school for any other topic, so I'll just school myself on public speaking. So I got to a book called Talk Like Ted, and you can find it on Audible, and maybe other places. I don't know, but I listened to it on Audible. And that book changed my entire perspective on public speaking. It's weird how it did, because I don't know that it said a lot more than what I've learned in all the other books, but there was, and it even said something about that I've heard time and time again. Like when you're standing in front of a group, public speaking, look at one person and watch their physical, the body language showing you whether they understand what you're saying or not. That's it. That was the one little sliver of advice within that book that changed my entire ability to public speak. Because now when I stand up, I don't look at a room as a whole. I look at a room as a bunch of individual people. And while I'm talking, I'm no longer thinking about what they think about me. If I'm no longer thinking about whether they think that I know what I'm talking about, or if I sound smart, or anything like that. Or if I have a rash on my neck, if they can see the rash on my neck, that's what I used to have. I used to get a rash on my neck whenever I get nervous. Now I'm talking like I'm talking to an individual person, and I'm watching their body language just like I would if I was sitting in a room with you and I'm talking to you, and I'm watching to see if you nod or not, or if you're yawning, or, if I see that you're yawning, then clearly I don't have your full attention. So I'm going to do something different so that I have your full attention. It's just like I have any other conversation with people. And it just completely changed me. It just completely changed me. So I keep practicing. I'm not perfect at it. I'm not trying to say like I read that line and now all of a sudden I'm the best speaker ever. But I don't have that physical reaction anymore, which is just super interesting to me that that's what happened. As I get away from work and do less public speaking in front of a group of people, I'm interested to see how that's going to change. If I start getting the anxiety back again or not. I would love to be able to do public speaking in a capacity, these topics that I talk about on my podcast, I would love to have the opportunity to do that and to get to these places and talk and practice. I don't know how that would feel on my head. That's the only problem with public speaking right now. I would probably have to wear sunglasses, I think. So, just to limit the exposure to my eyes and my head. But if anybody needs me to public speak, let's try it. So, exposure therapy is what this is called, and it's a powerful tool, and it's something I've unknowingly been practicing since I got sober 7 years ago. By exposing ourselves to our fears and anxieties in a controlled and safe way, we can teach our brain that I can handle this. And after each experience, it's important to follow through, right? Like following through when you're hitting a golf ball. After each experience, it's important to shift our focus from the fear to the facts. So if somebody's asking me, how did it go? I shouldn't be talking, well, I was totally freaked out. Like my heart was beating in my chest. And then I could feel my voice shaking. But then I thought, you know what I mean? That's not what we need to remember from the experience. So start with, I didn't want to do it, but I did. You can start with that. That's just like what I was talking about yesterday. I didn't wanna, but I will. Then after that, celebrate what happened and what you learned. Practice physically opening up and leaning forward towards the person that's asking you, how did it go? And celebrate the lessons that you learned instead of closing up and focusing on the fear and anxiety, and the physical symptoms that you experience. Body language plays a huge part in following through and closing the loop on our experience and our learning and our memory of that experience. I was thinking about, this is very much related to this idea of acting as if. Um, that's one thing that I do a lot of, or I did a lot of in my sobriety. And the more that I act as if, the more that I become what it is I was acting as if. It's kind of like smiling on the outside and leading to a smile on the inside, which I keep bringing up here lately. So pay attention to your self-talk, how you tell the story of your experiences, and your body language. The amygdala, I mean, I'm no doctor. If I was, I wouldn't be doing a podcast. The amygdala can be retrained, and the frontal cortex, which is the part that helps us do our things, can regain control. That's medical terminology there. Frontal cortex helps us do our things. It can regain control, allowing those physical reactions to subside. So when I get nervous, especially public speaking, I cannot think. Like I just can't think. It reminds me of when like after I had my stroke, I got to speak at a sobriety meeting on a Friday night, and there was like 50 something people there, maybe more than that. There were a lot of people there. And I was having these cognitive challenges, which I still have at times. So when my migraine gets worse, then it blocks my cognitive abilities, and I can't finish sentences. I can't remember words and that kind of thing. That's what anxiety does to me. If it's really, really, I'm in a bad place in front of people, it'll do the same thing. Um, so it's terrible, and I have to have every word written down when I'm public speaking, just in case my amygdala wakes up mid presentation, no matter how much I prepared ahead of time. But I have learned a lot of exercises in order to prepare for public speaking. Preparation, I think, is a big part of kind of subsiding a little bit of that anxiety as well. But this podcast is not about public speaking, it's about anxiety and fear. And so at the end, courage isn't the absence of fear and anxiety, it's the ability to lean in and take action despite our fear and anxiety. So the next time you feel anxiety creeping in, remember that you have the power to choose to fight rather than to run, fight or flight. You can choose to fight. My reaction used to be to run, to flight. I don't know, to hide, and now my automatic reaction. It started out as me having to pause and respond, but now it's becoming just a reaction. Is when I start feeling uncomfortable, I do it more. I practice it more. I lean into it. And it seems to be working for me. So that's all for today's episode of the Recovery Daily podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. And remember that you're stronger than you think. And we can embrace fear and anxiety if you try just a little at a time. Like I said, it's been 7 years that I've been just say yes to this, lean into it and see what happens. So next time you don't want to do something, say yes and lean into life. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.